Welcome back, everybody. As you know, a key part of the Basics of Business channel's purpose is to try and make sure that many of the early stage financial, legal, operational, administrative tasks you will face in your business do not slow you down. And we can help accelerate you through that frantic and often confusing and worrying stage. To that end, based on Neil and I's experience of helping hundreds of businesses and companies form and get started, we wanted to run through another 5 things you should look at and consider, and simply just get on and do if they apply to your business after you've set up your limited company. So without wasting any more time, let's just start running through them. Number one, Neil, one of the things we've talked about is getting your financial house records in order. From the point of view of, we know cash is king, cash flow is king. You've got to know where the money's coming in, where it's going out, so you know what position you're in at any given point in time.
Yeah, I think there's lots of reasons that we could go through why that's one of the first things we talking about today. And there's legal obligations. If you've set up a company, you have a legal obligation as a director to know what assets, liabilities, etc. that you have. But actually, as just a competent business person, and as you said, cash flow is king. Making sure you know what's going on in the business, what pressure points there might be financially, what you're spending your money on. And then there's also other regulatory stuff like, at some point the taxman's going to want to know what you've been up to, or investors might want to know. And so making sure you have some system for capturing that information. And it doesn't need to be complicated. It could be just, a spreadsheet that you're keeping a record of what your income is, what your costs are, or you can go on and use simple software, whether it's Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, that they're all perfectly adequate, relatively cheap, simple to do. But just making sure, as say, you have a system or process, and whether that is you willing to give up your Sunday afternoons to update your own spreadsheets or Xero or Sage or whatever, or you find a bookkeeper to help you do it.
It's not the most exciting thing, but it's got a bit, and even including people that owe you money, chasing them up and things like that. I mean, it's just real basic stuff in terms of to just make sure from a financial point of view, at any given point in time, you know exactly where you stand.
As you start out, it might be, as I say, it might be very much more compliance based of, I just want to know who I owe money to, who owes me money, and I'm just keeping a record of that. And if there's VAT issues or if there's payroll things that are going on, and you're just on top of it from a compliance point of view and just knowing what's going on and budgeting and so on. But then as a business grows and expands, then, you say it's not the most exciting part, but actually, in my experience, certain reporting, certain information, it can be really eye-opening. It can be really enlightening that you suddenly get a report that shows you a trend in something, or where you're not making as much money as you thought you were, and you can address it.
Or vice versa. If there's a bit more money coming in, you thought it's a boost. There's no doubt.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I think, as an accountant, I my bent is towards the numbers and how you use those numbers. But I say when you start out, there's some real good legal and compliance issues to make sure that one of the first things you do is make sure you're keeping a record of what is going on financially in your business. And then as the business expands and grows, that's something to build upon as well, to then get useful daily, weekly, monthly.
And it is a balance. I know you've talked about before of there's no point in spending a fortune in a system if you've nothing to count. But as in, it's just that you've got to have some sort of system. If it's just a spreadsheet, even if you're writing stuff down on a bit of paper, you've got to have something.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely my thing. People starting out is don't spend all your time and effort worrying about your accounts. Worry more about building and starting and growing your business. But having some record of what's going on will help you feel in control, be in control, make decisions, and as I say, just complying with with the rules and regulations.
Great. Number two, I think we'd say is get the right insurance. I think we sort of have a smile sort of chatting about this before. That, I mean, there are tons of types of business insurance. And we'll flick up some names of ones there just now, and you're not going to need them all in terms of, and having them all would cost you a fortune. But depending on your type of business, and your risk profile, and that's something we'll touch on again, as getting the right insurance to protect your business, whatever you're building, is one of the first important steps to do. Whether that's if you've got premises, insurance for the premises, if you're taking on employees, employer's liability insurance, different types of insurances will apply to different businesses, but it's a step that you've got to look at and go through in the early stages.
Yeah, I think insurance is it's a funny one, isn't it? All insurance is the same. You're paying money out, and you hope you're never going to need it and claim on it and whatever else. So it can feel like dead money, especially when you're starting a business. Funds can be tight, and you're going to waste money because you're just going to spend it for nothing coming back by having insurance. But having said that, there are certain occasions where it is a must, and employer's liability, public liability, you must have those insurances in place. That's a legal requirement if you employ anyone, and public liability if the public are coming to your premises or anything like that. The other thing that can trigger you making sure you have a policy is, if you're trading in that corporate world, that may be part of the condition to winning that contract. If you're trying to work with a big company, they may well ask, well, what insurance do you have? What what product liability or professional indemnity insurance do you have? So that if you do something wrong, we know that we've got some way of claiming it and getting it back. So that can be a reason why you have to consider insurance, because you won't get any work without it. And very often you find that people, because it's being dictated to, and because it's just a dead cost, or can be seen as that, the easy option is to go online, answer 10 questions and get some insurance, and then you can say to them, I've got professional indemnity insurance, I've got $500,000 of cover or whatever I've got, but you've never bothered to check the small print. Does it actually cover you for what you're doing? And when you're starting out, you may say, well, I don't care, because if it all goes wrong, it all goes wrong, and it's not my problem, so to speak. But I was working with a small tech startup, and it's like, well, let's go and talk to a broker. And we went and spoke to a broker and said, right, what do we need to think about? And it was helpful that they're sort of going, well, should you have a cyber policy? Should you have this? But it was a 28-page questionnaire that they asked us to fill out, so that they could assess and advise and tell us what sorts of policies we should have in place. As it turned out, there was a new tech startup policy that exists that covered most things anyway, but we wouldn't necessarily have known that without speaking to the broker, and he wouldn't necessarily have known that would have covered us for what we needed if we hadn't answered however many questions were on those 28 pages. But again, when you're busy and there's lots to do, who wants to be answering 28-page questionnaires when you're trying to start a business?
But at the same time, you can't put your head in the sand from that point of view. There is going to be a risk assessment of it, in terms of, you go direct to insurance companies, chances are every type of insurance, and there is a potential risk, otherwise the policy wouldn't. And you've got to do it, and you've just got to find your way through it.
And I think the other thing to bear in mind, another thing that puts you off doing it properly and whatever else, is because whatever you think you've got, that the insurance company are going to say, but you're not covered for that. And in the last couple of years with COVID, people thought they had business interruption insurance, but you do, but not for that, obviously.
Yeah.
We joke about, you shouldn't joke about it, but it's things like that then just make it again seem not so much a pointless exercise, but again, it's like I'm not getting value for money because I'm not getting anything back. And when I do need it,
it's not.
They're trying to wriggle out of it.
I suppose one of the benefits of that, everyone will have experience of personal insurance in some fruit. So dealing with insurance, whether that's car insurance, house insurance, contents, etc., for garages, things like that, you will have experience with insurance. So it's just the positive is you just take that to your business from that perspective, and just it will let you use that experience that we all have and just apply it to your business to get through it. But don't do nothing.
Yeah,
you've got to do it, and as Neil said, in terms of on occasions there are legal requirements for it, and from a business point of view, some businesses just won't do business with you unless you have a certain type of policy.
Yeah,
which in itself is a help, because then you know, okay, I'll just take out what they need. For me to get that business.
If you're getting it dictated to you, then you haven't got to
make a decision.
What level of cover is, if they're saying you've got to have £1 million of cover or we don't give you a contract, well, that's your starting point, is you need at least £1 million of cover. So
Before we move on to step 3, this, as you said, is another 5 steps. We've got an initial 5 steps video, which I think you'll be able to see the link to over there. So that's something to, if you're coming to this one first, to have another look at that one for the first 5 steps, we'd say, to talk about and go through after you're setting your limited company up. For this next 5 steps, number 3, we would say get the right business permits and licenses. And again, this will be business dependent, depending what you're doing. But it's another step that you've got to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's far too many industries and sectors for us to start going through what may or may not be appropriate for you. But whatever it is you're going into, you're more likely to know what sort of controls and regulations are there that to protect the public or to make people understand who's behind businesses and things. So it's important to ask those questions and make sure you do have those things, because again, the larger corporates will know about it, your customers will know about it, and they may be asking you, well, what have you got in the way of this type of certificate or this type of license? We need to see
particularly
that
things around like food and hospitality. There's tons of these sort of things. If you're based in the UK, there is a government website where you can go through a questionnaire to sort of look for license finders, and we'll put that link on screen and in the description below. But again, it's just a step. You've got to go through license, permits, permissions. It'll vary to sector, but once again, it's just something that you've got to do. Just sort of linking back to your insurance point of certain things, like it might affect some of your insurance in terms of if you don't have these permits, etc. And another one relates to sort of coming on to point 4 is thinking about whether you need to be registered with the Information Commissioner for data protection. We all know data protection, and we'll put this up on screen, if you process personal data, it's something you've got to be registered with the ICO. And just looking in terms of what it says in their website here, of every organisation or sole trader who processes personal information needs to pay a data protection fee to the Information Commissioner's Office unless they are exempt. And again, we'll put up examples of where you're exempt in terms of you're a certain type of person. But again, if you're in the UK, the Information Commissioner Office, there's again a questionnaire that you go through, which we'll put a link to, which you can run through. Processing is quite a wide term in terms of, again, just reading here, describes anything you're doing with personal information, including collecting, recording, organising and storing. A good simple example is if you're collecting emails for an email address and names of people, that is you processing personal information. Therefore, you've got to be protecting that data in certain shape or form and registering with the Information Commission Officer. If you've got CCTV, is the same. You're processing personal information.
And I think, although it's obviously a very specific area, and the fact that it's called the Information Commissioner's Office and stuff is all very grand, but actually it is a very simple process. That questionnaire it's not 28 pages; it's a handful of questions. You answer them. And the fee is what, 40 quid it starts at for the basic one. So it's not an onerous thing, but it's one of those things you want to make sure you've covered off.
Yeah, and it's back to our sort of main point of some things when you start a business, you just don't know what you don't know sometimes. This is one potential example for people of, they know about data protection, they know they need to be having security and IT in place to protect it, but they might not know, there's an official person, which, as I say, sounds very grand, but it is just literally a simple case of registering with them so they know who you are and what data that you're looking after on your customer's behalf. The point 5, which we wanted to talk about, was about protecting your intellectual property. Intellectual property, IP, probably you've heard about it in terms of what sometimes it can feel a bit intangible from that perspective, what it is, but it's something you've got to look at protecting in terms of a simple one of your name, your logo, if your product design, things like that, whether that applies to patents and stuff like that. The value that you've created in your business, you want to make sure is protected, just in terms of so that you can potentially benefit of it from whether it's licensing and making money, but also from a point of view of no one else is sort of taking the value from work that you're doing.
Yeah, and a lot of times that is overlooked because it's again there's no immediate obvious return or benefit. I've got this amount of time, this amount of money, I'm trying to start my business, what shall I focus on? We'll sort that out later, we'll do that another time, because I need to focus on this because I get payback straight away or whatever. So I think it is something that gets often overlooked, and then you never get round to sorting it out.
But every business has every single business has IP, and it's just a question of, do we need to take the steps to protect it, or there is a monetary aspect to it? And again, we'll put the link to the Intellectual Property Office to sort of get a feel for it. But it is something is worth thinking about in terms of, particularly if there's a lot of value in it.
Definitely, yeah.
Further on down the line. Might not be now, but further on down the line.
It's again the sort of thing, if you end up raising money, investors, it's that sort of competency, it's that professionalism, it's that, and the fact that if you're not registering the trademark and you're not, is that because you don't attach any value to your own brand and your own business name and logos and all that sort of stuff? Well, if you are going to say, look, I've got this business and we can expand it and roll it out, and we've got a great name and people know us and trust us, and it's something that's, it has a value, then why didn't you register it? Why didn't you trademark it? Some investors would look at that as a lack of confidence in your own business, that you didn't go ahead.
Equally, in terms of, you've just got to make the decision, but you might decide it's too expensive for us just now to get a patent for our product or a trademark for our logo. It's just not, but that's a conscious decision, which you can then revisit. If you said that to investors, it's up to them how they take it, but then at least they'll know, they know what they're doing, they've thought about it. That's investors, right? That's something I can help them with in terms of the money, and we can use it to get that. One sort of point on the name thing in terms of companies of, absolutely clear, just because your company is called XYZ Limited, for example, at Companies House, that does not mean that you own the IP in that name. So that's just something, again, to be clear about. Of some people will set up a company, call it a name, it's available, great, I've got the domain. That doesn't mean that you own that name from that perspective. So that's just one thing, an easy example to be clear on. And as I say, further on down the line, it can be a very valuable commodity.
Definitely.
I'm conscious some of the things that we've covered in this video and given UK specific examples. The generic thing, I think, would apply to businesses in lots of jurisdictions. So in terms of, it just be a case of finding out what the applicable areas or information commissioner in your jurisdiction, but in majority, particularly in Western businesses, there's
Yeah.
going to be similar stuff.
Yeah.
We hope you found that video useful. Please check out our other videos on how to get the basics of business right from day one. And please leave your comments and feedback below. And thanks for watching.
Thank you.